I've been encouraged to hear you say that we will stand by our NATO allies, that you would not support accepting the annexation of Crimea by Russia, and that you see Russia as currently an adversary and possibly an enemy. And I want to focus in on how you see Putin's leadership and Russia's role. You said previously that the Russians are strategic thinkers, and they have a plan. They have a plan to restore their role in the world order. My core concern is that their plan is actually to change the world order, and that they have used a wide range of tools, and we have not successfully pushed back on their campaign. I led a bipartisan delegation to Eastern Europe in August and was struck at the number of times in several countries we were briefed on a continuous campaign to divide Europe and the United States, to undermine our NATO alliance, and to divide Europe from within, and that Russia has used all the tools of state power, both overt and covert, to wage an aggressive propaganda campaign. Back in the 90s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, we used effectively Radio Free Europe and the National Endowment for Democracy. We were engaged in a full-on fight for democracy in the former Warsaw Pact countries and former Soviet republics. I think we should be using all of our tools to push back on this Russian aggression. Do you see RT as a Russian propaganda outlet, and how would you use and lead the resources of the State Department to counter Russian propaganda and to push back on this effort to change the rules of the world order?
Well, as you point out, utilizing the opportunity to communicate to the people of Russia, through mechanisms that were successful in the past, Radio Free Europe, and utilizing those type of sources, as well as providing information on the Internet to the extent people can access Internet, so that they have availability to the facts as they exist, to all the alternative reporting of events that are presented through the largely controlled media outlets inside of Moscow. That is an important way in which to at least begin to inform the Russian people as to what the realities are in the world. And it is an important tool that should be utilized.
It is the intelligence community's assessment that the Kremlin has a long-standing plan to undermine the global democratic order that we spent so much time and effort building in the decades since the Second World War. Will you rely on, and will you encourage the President-elect to rely on the career professionals in the intelligence community in your role as Secretary of State, if confirmed?
Senator, I have enormous respect for the intelligence agencies and the vital role that they play. So I will certainly be informed by their findings. And I think in terms of then understanding that as they apply to the facts on the ground, it's important in guiding our future policies and guiding our future options for how to respond.
I know this press conference has happened while you've been here in this confirmation hearing, but just an hour or so ago, the President-elect finally publicly said that he thinks it is true that Russia was behind a hacking effort, and he gave no more specific response to the question, what should we do about it, other than we will work something out. Many of us are concerned about the lack of a clear embrace of a congressional role and a clear embrace of congressional-led sanctions. There is a bipartisan bill that will move forward to enact sanctions so that it's not just the action of one outgoing president. You've given some constructive answers previously about your view on sanctions and your view that if done in a solid and sustainable way, they can be a constructive tool of foreign policy. Please reassure me that you would welcome working closely with Congress on enacting sanctions against Russia in response to their war crimes in Syria, their invasion of Crimea and its occupation, and their attack on our democracy.
If confirmed, Senator, I look forward to engaging with this entire committee, particularly on the construct of new sanctions. And I think, as I've indicated in response to other questions, what I would hope is that the executive branch, and in my role at the State Department, if confirmed, would be the latitude to use those sanctions in efforts to cause modifications in Russia's positions. If they're already in place and mandatory, then that may remove some opportunities for us to explore ways in which we can use them as a tool and give the Russian government the option of moving because of the threat of those.
Well, I will say, if I could, Mr. Tillerson, that I was a member of this committee when the current Secretary of State came and asked us not to strengthen sanctions against Iran, to give the executive branch the freedom to operate. And I think by a vote of 99-0, the Senate went ahead with bipartisan sanctions. Senator Menendez earlier. I do think that we should work in concert and in consultation, but there are some tools that Congress sometimes chooses to move forward with. And it's my hope we could strengthen sanctions to show our determination to contain Putin's aggression and to push back on his adversarial actions. Let me move to another topic, if I could. Do you think it advances America's interests to have the Russian military supporting Assad, coordinating with Iran, and engaging in combat actions in Syria against the moderate opposition and against folks who we've relied on as allies in the fight against ISIS?
As I indicated in my opening remarks, that is contrary to American interest.
How do you think we can strengthen our hand against Iran, given their destabilizing regional actions? And in your view, as you reconsider the nuclear agreement with Iran, if we withdraw from the agreement unilaterally, how will we sustain the current level of visibility we have into Iran's nuclear program, and how would that make us safer or stronger?
With respect to the recent agreement to limit Iran's ability to advance or make progress towards development of a nuclear weapon, if confirmed, my recommendations, and I think this is consistent with what the President-elect is now, is to do a full review of that agreement, as well as any number of side agreements that I understand are part of that agreement. Examine whether Iran and our ability to verify whether Iran is meeting its obligations under the agreement, and ensure that we are enforcing all the mechanisms available that hold them to that agreement. No one disagrees with the ultimate objective that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. The current agreement does freeze their ability to progress, but it does not ultimately deny them the ability to have a nuclear weapon. My understanding is the current agreement, for instance, does not deny them the ability to purchase a nuclear weapon. It just denies them the ability to develop one. So I think there are additional areas that have to be considered, and most importantly, if we choose to use this agreement as a way to provide an opportunity to discuss what comes next, because the real important question is what comes at the end of this agreement. And what comes at the end of this agreement must be a mechanism that does, in fact, deny Iran the ability to develop a nuclear weapon, and that means no uranium enrichment in Iran, no nuclear materials stored in Iran. And the other side of that is, what does Iran get? Would be through working with partners, would be to provide Iran the access and the means to peaceful uses of nuclear materials, nuclear power, medical applications and industrial applications, but that would be done under a very controlled process, working with other partners to do that. Whether Iran is prepared to chart a pathway that looks like that, we'll only know once we engage in discussions.
Well, many members of this committee look forward to working with you to make sure that we are restraining Iran's nuclear ambitions effectively, fiercely, and that we are implementing what we get out of that current agreement and reviewing it closely going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I appreciate your observation that every administration is anxious to work with Congress until such a time